If you're a small business owner who thinks that branding means a logo, a color palette, and a pretty website, this episode may completely change how you see your business. Today, I'm sitting down with Shayne Mackey. She's the founder of Bespoke Creative and the brand Atelier. She's a brand strategist with more than 3 decades in category-defining brands in healthcare, luxury, and founder-led businesses. And I'll be honest, after talking with Shayne, I realized what I thought branding was a little incomplete. In this conversation, we unpack what a brand really is, why positioning matters more than most people realize, how to stop chasing that shiny marketing tactic, and why your brand should be treated as a living, breathing asset, not a one-time and done project. We also dig into the different kinds of brands, personal brands, expert brands, founder-led brands, and the mistakes that some of us might be making. If you've ever felt stuck, scattered, or unsure why your marketing isn't landing, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to Main Street Success Stories. I'm your host, Jennifer Koch, entrepreneur, business coach, and founder of Next Wave Business Coaching. My first business I opened 2 days before giving birth to my second daughter. But then I grew it for 20 years. I grew it from a local bakery into a national brand and eventually sold it for a profit. I know firsthand how tough the odds can be. Only 1 out of 2 small businesses make it to year 5. That's why I'm passionate about helping entrepreneurs change those statistics through coaching, mentoring, and this podcast, where I share real stories of others, their success, their struggle, their mindset shifts, their fears, and lots of wins along the way. Because none of us are alone in this journey of entrepreneurship, and I want to make sure that you have the support you need. My goal is simple: to inspire you, motivate you, and show you there's a path to building a profitable business. So let's dive into the next episode of Main Street Success Stories. Welcome, Shayne. I am really excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be with you today.
So, Shayne, you are the founder of Bespoke Creative and also the brand Atelier. And today we are going to deep dive into branding because I know after talking with you what I thought branding was for small businesses. I was incorrect in a lot of different ways. And I got to believe a lot of us are. And so you have been doing this work for over 3 decades. You are what I would call a branding expert, and you work with some really big businesses in healthcare and luxury spaces. So what do you feel? I guess let's just get to the basics. Teach us, what is a brand?
Thank you. You know, a brand, everybody thinks a brand is a logo, a website, a color palette, and a social media platform, right? At a smaller level. And a brand is really a living, breathing thing. It is the culmination of so many of your decisions from day one. What you name your company, how you position your company, and that's the topic you and I could sit here and talk about for hours, because when I talk to small business owners and founders about the word positioning, they look at me like I have 9 heads. But it's the vision and the mission that you put that you look at, and those two things are very different, and nobody quite goes big enough with either of them. But it's every decision you make, and it's the foundation you pour for the business you're building. So your brand is not just your name. It's not a logo. It's not a tagline. It's not a website. It's not a color palette. It is the sum total of all of those things. But it starts with the vision you have, right? Which should be large enough that you can never quite achieve it. It should be very, very aspirational. So if you write the vision for your business and you can reach it in a year, 18 months, it's not big enough. You always need something that you're reaching toward and that you're never going to quite get to. Your mission is, I always say, the best way to think about it, your mission statement is the time to make the donut statement. It is the why you get up and go to work every day. It is that very, very fundamental statement that says we do X for Y. And I think people kind of miss the two because they see the vision a little differently, and then they don't quite know what to do with the mission. Vision is lofty, mission is day-to-day work. But one of the most important things that nobody does anymore is position their business. And everybody goes, well, what does that mean? It means, okay, you're in category X, right? You're an attorney. And so you're in the law space, but that's a massively huge space to be. And if you as a law practice, whether you're an individual, whether you're building a larger practice with more people, whether you want to grow this to something even bigger, if you don't put yourself in the right place, what your specializations are, who you want to work with, who your audience is, what you do best, the market will do it for you, and 99% of the time they're going to get it wrong. And then if you don't put yourself in that space and find the white space within the space, right? Because I think that's what's most interesting about this is that you can say, okay, I'm a family law practice. Okay, that's still kind of broad. What are you doing within family law? Are you doing adoptions? Are you doing trusts? Are you doing, what are you doing within there, and how can you differentiate yourself, and how, do that research and find that space? Because within all of that, I think one of the things that's really important that nobody wants to quite embrace is that there's room for everybody. There is truly room for everybody, even in the most crowded market spaces. And that's why finding your position and finding that white space, even if you differentiate yourself by like 5%, that 5% makes all the difference in the world, because there is a marketplace out there for everybody. And I think a lot of people get defeated by that, and they think they have to be all things to all people. And in doing that, you make yourself know nothing to no one, because in trying to be everything, you can't be enough for the right people. I was just actually in an advisory board before this, having this very conversation about trying to position one of my clients, and they were beating me up pretty good because I was a little double-minded about it, and they were like, "No, no, 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 no. You have got to get razor focused and figure out where you're going to be and who you're going to show up for, because that's how you become the most profitable, believe it or not." And they tell you to niche down, and even like Tony Roberts and Dean Graziosi and all these people and building courses and all the things that they talk about, they all talk about niching down and niching down and niching down, and you feel like you're going to niche down to 12 people. Like,
Right.
what? Sometimes that's all you need. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Sometimes, depending on your business model, sometimes you only need 12 clients. You don't need 170. So that's the real foundational work. And when you pour that foundation of a brand, let me bring us back to where we were. But when you pour that foundation of the brand and you answer those questions of who are you? What do you do? Why does it matter? Right? Which is what gets you to your white space. And I like to add a fourth question, because it's the question we all subconsciously ask everybody, which is, what's in it for me?
Mhm.
Because every time we have a transaction with anyone, anything, any
Right.
brand, anything, we're always asking ourselves that question. What's in it for me?
And when you say me, you're not talking about the business owner, you're talking about their client or
You're talking
consumer.
about your consumer, right?
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
but yes. So when you're talking about engaging, I don't care if it's a business coach, if you're buying a new car, if you're buying a house, if you're buying a sneaker, if you need to go buy a new lipstick, if you're standing there trying to figure out what cereal to buy, subconsciously we're all asking ourselves that question. What's in it for me? What's this
Mhm.
going to get me? What's this coach going to get me? What's this car going to do for me? How are these sneakers going to help my feet and not make me twist my ankles? How healthy is this cereal? It is a question in one form or another we always ask. And so we're always having to answer that value question, right? And at the end of the day, branding and having a good brand is all about trust and value. Because way, way back in the day, when America, I can take you back to the history of branding. When America was starting to grow and people were moving out of the cities and into more rural areas, all of a sudden you weren't buying from local shopkeepers anymore, whether it was your butter, your eggs, or your parts for your tractor. Companies had to figure out how to build relationships with their consumers, because they weren't having this one-off conversation with them. And so truly, that's how it started. They started putting logos and labels and
Mm.
stamps on their products that were getting shipped out of the cities, so that people started to recognize who these products were and who they were coming from. And that's how you started to build a relationship. Because at the end of the day, believe it or not, you have a relationship with everything you own, everything you buy, everything you consume, every person you engage with. Every transaction is a relationship. And so that's what branding does for you. Everything you do after you build that foundation, yes, you have to market, you have to have a social media platform, you have to have a website, you have to have a logo, you have to have all of those things. But those are the manifestations of building kind of this foundation. And if you pour that strong, you can think of yourself as a heritage brand, even if you're only 18 months old, because you're thinking ahead. That's where this vision statement comes in.
Right.
Because
Okay.
you continue to look forward, you continue to aspire, you would continue to move toward that space. And again, knowing that it's a living, breathing thing makes this a very interesting proposition, right? Because you can't set it and forget it on day one. Most people launch a brand and they put it out there, and unless you're Apple or Nike or, a Kardashian dropping some big something,
Right.
most of the time, day one is really kind of anticlimactic, and you go, "What did I just do?" Right?
Mhm.
The imposter syndrome shows up, the anxiety shows up, the worry of, "Oh my god, is anybody gonna buy this?" shows up, "I'm gonna be a total failure." And so but you have to remember, you spent time, whether it was 6 months, a year, 18 months. A lot of the big brands that I work on, we start sometimes 3 years out before we've got a launch date, building all of these things, building the personality, building the persona, finding that white space, talking to people in the category, looking at your target audience, understanding who it is you need to talk to and how you need to talk to them and with them. And then you get to the launch, and it's like it truly is like raising a child, right? And raising a human, because you're in that gestation phase, and then you give birth to your brand, and your brand's going to evolve over time, right? But the DNA is never going to change. And it's the same way if you pour this foundation. Your DNA, if you do it right from the beginning of the brand, will stay the same, but you're going to course correct over time. You're going to find learnings. You're going to have, your toddler's going to learn to crawl before it walks. You're going to get into adolescence and you're going to push boundaries. You're going to get into teenage years and you're going to want to change your hair, and you're going to realize the bangs were a really bad idea, and you're going to course correct a little bit. And then and it goes all the way through to what we call mature brands, right? That have been there for a long, long time. And legacy brands that have been around for 100 years, and we see them in cars, and we see them in fashion, and we see them in, in furniture, and we see them in watches, and we see them in these different categories. There's so much to be learned from them, even if you're a one-person solopreneur that, may never grow beyond, that space. But the branding and the strategy, those rules never change. And I don't care if you make $200,000 a year or if you make $200 billion a year. The rules never change. And the better that you do them at the beginning, the better you will succeed down the line.
So let's unpack this. This is really, really cool.
Sorry,
And
that's
you're
very
explaining
long-winded.
it in a very different way than most of us here.
Yeah.
Because, most small businesses, we're talking the newer, they're in year 2, year 3.
Mhm.
They start a business because they see a problem or they have a desire, they have a passion, they have a why. They have a really
Yeah.
big why. And I can't imagine their why really is part of their mission statement or vision. It's more kind of, oh, I want freedom and flexibility for my family. They're not thinking that big picture. So I love how you say that it's a living, breathing thing.
Mhm.
Because is it fair to say that most businesses end up kind of evolving their brand? Because I'm thinking even my business, where I started 5 years ago, it's very different than where I am today. And I don't know if I could have sat there as a solo entrepreneur and put together a 10, 20-year vision because I wasn't quite sure where it was going.
Yeah. And I don't think you don't need to think that far ahead. Here's the scary statistic, and it's the one no one wants to talk about, but it's the reality. Only I think it's like 2-3% of businesses survive the first 5 years. And I mean, it's a small, small percentage. And the percentage of those that are successful, like that actually are in the black, is even smaller, depending on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't thinking about that, and I don't think they should. I have a very good friend that he's in year 5 of a big equestrian brand, and we just had a conversation and said, you know what, let's sit down and it's time to think about this. But again, we poured the right foundation, but it's time to tweak it again a little bit. And I think a lot of people end up having to change their businesses in those first 5 years because they didn't sit down and ask the hard questions to begin with. And most people don't have access to the people that can help you ask those hard questions, because brand building is not easy. Brand strategy it's not easy, and it's not thinking that most people understand, and it's expensive.
Right.
So and there's the foundation work there's nothing tangible to it, right? So you have to do all this foundation work, and I tell clients all the time, just stick with me. It's so important, so important, so important. They want to start with the logo and the website because they can see it and
Well,
feel it.
that's fun,
It's
right?
fun.
That's the
Right.
shiny object. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
fun.
Everybody
Yeah.
gets, yes, shiny penny syndrome. So it's it's a difficult people don't normally think like this. And I say this to clients all the time, and I realized, having just launched a course for founders to do this and just took my first cohort through, and a couple people said, I feel like I just went through a master's level program I'm not qualified for. And I thought, ugh. And I took that feedback, but then I thought, you know what? You can't really dumb this stuff down. Like it's hard and it's challenging for a reason, because it puts the rigor on your thinking and on your business in a way that you can stand up 5 years later and it is correct. And it's uncomfortable because sometimes people will have ideas and a why and see a problem and want to solve it, but they want to do it their way, and there may be a better way. It's
Mhm.
just and everybody wants to go and launch and make money, and I get that. Like, that's the hard part, is that if you are in if you're in a position where you need to make money right now, this gets even more painful. But a couple years down the line, you may have to pivot, or you may have to re-explain yourself because you didn't position correctly to begin with.
Well,
Okay.
and I think there's some learnings too that
Oh yeah,
happen.
absolutely.
It's like we launch. I always say new business owners are like teenagers. They think they know it all. If I build it, they will come. We
Right.
just think our idea is the best thing
Yep.
and since sliced bread and it's just going to go.
Yep.
But there's some learnings that come along. And
Absolutely.
that's why I guess what I'm hearing from you is, if somebody's feeling, I mean, how do you know if your brand's not hitting the mark? How do you know if you need to tweak it or pivot it a little bit?
If you're not selling anything. I mean, but you've got to give yourself time, right? And this is the challenge, because people, and this happens in life all the time, right? People want to pivot right before the breakthrough.
Yes.
And so there's a little bit of patience that has to go with it. There's a little bit of alchemy to all of this too. But again, if you do that work up front, and I don't care if your vision and your mission are wrong. If you positioned yourself correctly and you're telling the right story and you're engaging with the right people, then you're not going to have those moments. But the panic is where the panic happens. Everybody goes, "Oh my God, this is wrong. I got to change my color palette. I got to change my website. I got to change this. No, you don't." Because usually at that moment you go, it's 10 minutes later, literally, where the breakthrough happens, and all of a sudden the right person sees it and they tell two friends and they tell two friends, and then all of a sudden the whole thing changes. Again, I fully recognize on the smaller business level the challenge of all of this, because when you've got the big marketing budgets, right, and you can seed the market and till the soil before you launch the product, it's a very, very different experience.
Right.
Every brand goes through this, right? Like I said, I work on one of the biggest brands in the world. We have to pivot all the time, and you have to test and see. You have to have conversations. You have to be willing to listen to feedback, right? You need
Okay.
to be willing to hear what customers are saying, both positive and negative. You need to really listen to what the pain points are of your market, so that you know that you're hitting them in the way that they need you to. And I think that's where people say, I want to do it. I like teenagers. I want to do it. I want to do it this way. And you're like, okay, but if you had turned right, you would have gotten there,
A lot
25 minutes
faster.
faster.
So one thing that's kind of, I guess, the buzzword we hear a lot these days is personal brand.
Oh, yes.
Especially for solo entrepreneurs or people that have small teams. So they're building these businesses, they're building what we're calling personal brands.
Yeah.
And we're being told that people want to see you chopping onions in your kitchen and they want to see you throwing laundry in your washing machine because you got to show them your personal side. I guess I kind of struggle with that a little bit because
Mhm.
do people really care about me doing laundry? Yes, I'm a human. Yes, I do laundry like everybody else. So where does personal brand fit in your strategy?
So I have been the biggest disruptor in this topic for the last year. Like, I've been in a couple groups that, everybody's like, oh, I've got to build my personal brand. And I cringe, because no, you don't. No, you
Thank
don't.
you. Thank you for that because I
No,
don't
you
want to.
don't. And no, you shouldn't. And Put down the knife and
Put
don't
down the
show them
phone.
what you're eating for breakfast and don't get ready with me. Personal lives should be personal. And I'm going to rant for 1 second. I don't understand why everyone has become so willing to give up all of their privacy and blast their entire life on social media. And not just for the fact that nobody needs to know, but from a security and safety perspective, like, what are you doing? I crafted this 4 pillars of brand strategy. And influencers stepped into social media in the teens and kind of took it by storm. And for whatever reason, everybody decided that, especially on a small business level, the big brands use influencers and use them correctly, but nobody builds an influencer brand. But everybody thought that that was the way to sell everything. And I can tell you unequivocally, that is not how anything gets sold. It is pure entertainment. Now, and remember, those people that are influencers and building those, and there's 2 levels of personal brand. So I'm going to split it up. There's the influencer and there's the expert brand. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But the influencer model, remember, they're not getting paid by those who are watching them. They're getting paid by the collaborations of the people and the clothes they're wearing, the food they're eating, and the stuff they're decorating with, and the makeup they're trying on. And that's how they're making their money. They are making their money from other brands that are using them to sell to you and to entertain you while you're doom scrolling through TikTok, Instagram, whatever, right? Snapchat,
Right.
Reddit, Pinterest, all of them. They don't make money off of their watchers. That's pure entertainment. It's all done by everybody else. So stop. Stop, 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 stop. No more. I've 26, I pray, is the year the personal brand goes away. Instead, you can be what I like to call an expert model, right? An expert model still uses a social first strategy. And I want to touch on this for a second because everybody thinks you're going to sell everything on social media. And I want to tell you that absolutely unequivocally, that's not going to happen because you've got to fish where your fish are. And your fish, for whatever your product, service, whatever is, may not be on social media. As a brand strategist, I'm never going to get a client off of social media, ever.
Right.
I'm too expensive. It's not the market. I have a handle. I haven't posted there since August because I can't stand it. Like I can't stand that rat race and that hamster wheel. But it is a place where if you choose to want to be social first, although I'm going to tell you, look at an omni-channel strategy, you want to highlight your expertise. Remember, I'm going to go back to the WIFM statement, the what's in it for me statement. If you want people to follow you and learn from you and click through, you need to show them your knowledge, your thought leadership. You need to educate them on your topic. You need to show them the value that you're going to bring to them. You need to answer the what's in it for me question. And you do that by talking about things within your category. You don't have to show your children. You don't have to show your trip to Disney World. You don't have to show your beautiful Christmas tree. You don't have to show your friends all going to brunch or skipping down the street. As a matter of fact, that will lessen your credibility in that category. So
Okay.
reels that are talking about a topic, right? Great. Carousels, the new hot thing. Everybody says, forget the reels. It's all about carousels now because Meta
Right.
is going to move the algorithm every day till we die.
Exactly.
So that's where you live. You live there in social, you live there in blog posts, you live there in your email, you live there on your website, right? Because here's the thing you also have to remember is you always want your customers 2 clicks away from an offer and you want them to land on your owned content, places you own. There are 2 places that we all own now. We own our email lists and we own our websites. And
Yep.
that's it.
And that's
We
it.
do not own our social media content. And you get back to changing things. A lot of people get really, really bored with saying the same things over and over and over again. But if you're social first or social only, you've got to remember that you put content out there and not everybody sees it all the time. Like I'm seeing content for the first time on my personal Insta page that I put on my bespoke page in August and it's December and I'm just seeing it.
Yeah.
You have to remember that this content doesn't just get pushed to the world and everybody sees you. So you may be bored with you, but nobody else is bored with you.
That is such a great reminder. And I tell my clients that a lot because we tend to think it's not working,
Right.
like you said earlier before the breakthrough. And
Right.
it's because we're sick of hearing ourselves talk about it. And we think everybody should know as much as we know about it. But you're right. A fraction of the people have even seen it. So I
Yep.
love that you reiterated that. So you talked about two of the four pillars. What are the other two pillars of a good brand?
So you've got the influencer brand, you've got the expert brand, and then you get into the founder led brand, which is a level up from expert. It's where most people are going to live once they get really established. Because again, and a lot of people want to live in the founder led space, but they're still acting like they're influencers or in that personal brand space. So when you're a founder led brand, it means that you had a vision, right? Steve Jobs had a vision for Apple. There's an amazing Steve Jobs story connected to Apple, but Apple exists post Steve Jobs. Tim Cook's about to retire. Like Apple lives outside of that. Patagonia's owner and original founder was a massive visionary. That's part of their story, but that's not the story. So when you talk about a founder-led brand, you as the founder are part of the story, but you're not the whole story. So again, you're talking about your product, you're talking about your service, you're talking about all of those things because that's what's most important. We don't know what Starbucks CEO does on the weekends, right?
Right.
That's not a great founder story, but they're an enterprise brand now, which is the fourth one, and I'll get there in a minute. But that's where a lot of people should live, but you become smaller, you become less, and you become an about page, and you become an interesting story in the brand, but you're not the brand anymore, right?
So let me ask you this. A brand go from expert and then evolve to
Mhm.
founder led? It's
Mhm.
like day one, we're not going to say, hey, I'm building a founder led brand.
It makes sense to start in that expert space. And I think depending on what you do, product brands a lot of times start founder led, right? But
Okay.
like service brands probably start more expert brand, especially in the social space and kind of in the marketing space. And yes, they can evolve. E- and even an influencer sometimes can pivot. It's a hard jump, but they can pivot. But expert can go to founder, and then you can go to enterprise brand, right?
Okay.
And the enterprise brand is what everybody would consider the big brand, right? Would consider the Apple or the Gucci or the Nike, whatever. But here's the real difference between an expert brand and an enterprise brand is just the systems you have in place, right? You look at founder led and you look at enterprise brands as brands that are going to potentially outlive you, right? And so if you've got something, if you want to leave a legacy, if you're standing up a business that you want to eventually walk away from, you need to move it down that way so that you are not totally tied to that business so that you can step back and have a life. There are brands that do it. Ralph Lauren is an entire universe with his name on it. The brand, and when he goes, the brand will not die. Armani just passed away. He mandated the brand was sold on his passing, but that brand will live on. Dior lived on, those sorts of things. But if this is something, and this is something I think a lot of people think about, especially when they start a company, whether you're leaving it to your children or you've got an exit strategy, which everybody should have. Um, that's what allows you to grow because that enterprise brand could still only be $1 million brand rather than a $50 billion brand, but it's got systems and processes in place so that you're not chief cook and bottle washer anymore, and it exists outside of you, and you can live outside of it, right? If you stay in that expert space, it's just you.
Right.
If you move to that founder space, you're in the story and you're wonderful and revered and you want to be emeritus someday. That's great, but it can live and then it moves into that enterprise space. So you can evolve it to that point. And it's all kind of on your risk and where you want to go and how much you want to grow and how big you want it to be.
Wow. So you really have given us some really good things to think about. And so you have some tools to help us because obviously, this is, like you said earlier, this is a big subject.
Mhm.
And I also agree with you on the foundation. That's what I love to help business owners with is the foundation of their business. And a lot of times we skip that step because we get bored. It's not shiny. We just want to move on and, keep running forward to the
And
next
it's
thing.
hard.
You have a course now
I
that
do.
can kind of help people navigate this a little bit
I
and
do.
start to put together their vision, their mission, their positioning, and also kind of see what pillar they are in and how they can move to the next pillar. So tell us a little bit more about how a listener can get some help really navigating through this.
Absolutely. So my website is the hyphen brand atelier hyphen, or there's the hyphen brand hyphen atelier.com.
Which
And
I will put in the show notes.
thank you. Yes, I hate the hyphens, but it was the only way I could get the name. But I built a course that is, and I'm going to open enrollment again in January. I built a course that takes you from literally from talking about what is a brand all the way to kind of the whole idea of stewardship and what it looks like long term, so that we go through the vision, writing your vision, your mission, your positioning. We look at market segmentation. We look at audience and customer segmentation, which is the real foundation. And then I also take you through some of the fun stuff. So you look at brand strategy and what does that look like? How do you sound? Who are you for? I always love the if your brand was a person, who would they be? To really put that personality on. So we pour the foundation and then we build the scaffolding. And by the end of the 10 weeks, you actually get an entire brand playbook that gives you creative briefs, gives you all of your statements, your vision, your mission, your positioning, gives you who your target audience is, gives you your market positioning and who your competition is, because you need to know who they are, and what they're saying. And then we get into some of the creative brief discussions too, so that you can hand this whole book, like 10 weeks of worksheets, and you can hand this book to your marketing team and your strategists and everybody, and to the people you recruit, because you've written your story, and say, here you go. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is why it matters. And it even answers the what's in it for me question. And so, and I want to take everybody through to really understanding what stewardship means. We talk about launch. We talk about marketing strategies. We talk about the beginning of a tactical plan. We talk about metrics and KPIs and what it means to measure and how to measure effectively. We talk about those moments that you want to panic and why you shouldn't. And then we talk about how to get you through that stewardship phase, knowing that you're going to reevaluate your brand at least once a year. I'm about to launch a podcast before the end of the year about vision and why it's important to look at your vision every year. We do the journals and we do the words of the year. We do all these things for ourselves.
Right.
How are we going to improve us? Guess what? Your brand, your business needs that too. And this gives you that playbook to start that, and gives you that stewardship that says, okay, 6 months out, what are we looking at? 90 days out, what are we looking at? A year out, what are we looking at? And then how do we reevaluate? And do we need to course correct?
Right.
Because you know what? The markets shift, we shift. Like, you have to be nimble, right?
Yes.
You have to have a North Star, but you have to be nimble.
And I've heard you say too that when we do this work, when we spend time doing this work, everything else becomes easier. You know, I
Yes.
think one of the things that small businesses spend so much time on is content.
Yes.
And we all know that we don't own social media, but we're on there. We're all on there. We feel the pressure to be on there,
Mhm.
and we spend a ton of time. And we
Mhm.
also spend a ton of time writing blogs and emails and everything else. And a lot of times, like you said, we're missing the mark because our
Right.
brand isn't aligned. So I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing this big picture, because I bet it would be a safe bet to say that most of us did what you said at the beginning. We picked out a pretty logo and colors, and we've got all our little templates and all that, but we're not really treating our brand like a living, breathing thing.
Let
And
me
so,
Let me give your audience one note on content. You need to pick, and this will change everything. You'll get bored, but I promise you it'll change everything. Pick 3 to 5 topics about your brand and stick to them for 6 months and see what happens. Pick 3 to 5 things that you do really well, right? Who are we? What do we do? Why does it matter? Pick 3 pillars and of content topics and just talk about that. And that will astound you when you start to listen to people over and over. Start to pay attention. When you start to listen to all these pros out there, they say the same things over and over and over again. And there's a reason why.
yeah.
3 to 5 subjects, and that's it.
Okay. Challenge accepted for the next 6 months.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your expertise and your time. And I'm going to put all these links in the show notes, and highly encourage people to check out your course that's starting in January. And can they jump in anytime, or is it a start time?
I'm gonna start time it, just because I do a live call with everybody, so I wanna keep the cohort small. I wanna keep it to 20 people at a time, just so everybody gets value from it. I'm actually propping it up on Circle, so it'll have community with it too, so people can talk and share and hopefully collaborate. So I'm gonna do 4 cohorts a year. Stay tuned. There will be a sign up that people can sign up for more information, but I'll open it in the first quarter and go from there. So I'll do 4 a year, I think is on
Awesome.
target.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
enjoyed this conversation. It's really got my wheels turning. I have a lot to think about.
My pleasure.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch base on the 3 big takeaways from this conversation. First, your brand is not your logo. It's not your color palette. It's not your Instagram feed. It's the sum of the decisions that you're making, starting with your vision, starting with your mission, and clearly how you position yourself in the market. Second, trying to be everything to everyone doesn't create opportunity, it just creates confusion. And finally, when your brand foundation is strong, everything else gets easier. Your marketing, your content, your messaging, and you show up in the marketplace and people want to hear what you have to say. If this conversation got your wheels turning, that's a good thing. Branding isn't a one-time task. And like she said, it's a living, breathing asset in your business. If you're feeling stuck, stretched, or unsure of what your next win should be, I join you to learn more about my program, Earn More, Stress Less. It's a 9-pillar program to help you get unstuck and find the next win in your business. If you are looking for some guidance besides just AI, because AI can't do it all, let's reach out and have a conversation. There's a link in the show notes to make that call today. Until next time, thank you for listening and please support your local businesses.